Hi there. Welcome to NapTime History channel. Tonight we're stepping into the perfumed shadows of a frontier parlor house, where red lamplight spills across dusty boardwalks and piano music drifts through saloon doors. You're about to experience life as a brothel worker in the American Wild West, and honestly, you probably won't survive the mercury treatments alone, let alone the rest of it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. Now, let's drift back in time. The stagecoach wheels finally stop churning up dust, and you step down onto the wooden platform, your worn boots hitting the boards with a hollow thud. Your stomach churns, not from the 3-day journey across rutted trails, but from what lies ahead. You clutch a crumpled newspaper advertisement that promised employment for young ladies in the hospitality trade, though you know exactly what kind of hospitality they mean. The year is 1878, and you've arrived in Deadwood, or maybe Tombstone, or perhaps one of a dozen other boom towns sprouting like mushrooms after rain across the frontier. The air tastes of alkali dust and horse manure, mixed with the sharp tang of freshly cut pine from all the hasty construction. Men outnumber women 20 to 1 here. You can feel their eyes tracking your movement like hawks watching a rabbit. Some historians estimate that 1 in 10 women in these frontier towns worked in the sex trade, though nobody kept careful records of such things. You adjust your travel-dusty dress, the only respectable one you own, and start walking toward the part of town where the buildings grow fancier and the laughter gets louder. Your feet know where to go even if your mind rebels. Past the assay office where grizzled miners weigh their gold dust. Past the general store with its barrels of pickles and bolts of calico. Past the Methodist church, still just a tent with a crude wooden cross, where the minister's wife deliberately looks through you as if you're already transparent. The respectable ladies always know. They can smell desperation like bloodhounds catching a scent. There it is. The velvet slipper, 3 stories of fresh painted glamour rising above the squat wooden buildings around it. Mainstream historians note that the fanciest brothels often occupied the best real estate in town, their madams being among the wealthiest property owners. But here's something they don't tell you in school. Many parlor houses installed speaking tubes between rooms, not for calling servants, but so working girls could signal for help without alerting potentially violent customers. You notice the windows on the upper floors have heavier curtains than seems necessary for privacy alone. You pause at the carved double doors, your hand trembling slightly. Behind you lies a failed farm, a dead husband, or maybe a factory job that paid too little to live on. Historians still argue whether most women entered prostitution by choice or circumstance, but standing here, the distinction feels meaningless. Hunger is hunger. Survival is survival. The doorknob is polished brass, imported from San Francisco. It turns easily under your hand. You cross the threshold, and the outside world falls away like a discarded shawl. Inside, the air hangs thick with lavender toilet water, Turkish tobacco, and something else, A musky sweetness you'll later learn is opium smoke drifting down from the private rooms upstairs. Your eyes adjust to the dimness, taking in red damask wallpaper, gilt-framed mirrors, and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than most miners see in a year. Well, well, fresh off the stage, aren't we? The voice flows like honey over broken glass. You turn to see a woman in her 40s, corseted within an inch of her life, burgundy silk rustling as she approaches. This is Big Nose Kate, or Diamond Lil, or Chicago May. Madams always had names like poker hands. She circles you slowly, examining your teeth, your hands, the straightness of your spine, your livestock at auction, but at least the barn is fancy. She leads you deeper into the parlor, and you feel like you're being swallowed by a velvet whale. The main room sprawls before you, Turkish carpets soft enough to sleep on, horsehair sofas upholstered in wine-colored brocade, and a piano so glossy you can see your distorted reflection in its surface. A grandfather clock ticks in the corner, its pendulum marking time in this place where time moves differently. Girls in various states of undress lounge across the furniture like exotic cats, their silk wrappers falling open to reveal corsets and bloomers trimmed with Belgian lace. Ladies, the madam announces, her voice cutting through their chatter, we have a new dove for our nest. The metaphors in this business are endless. Doves, flowers, angels, anything but what you actually are. The women look up with expressions ranging from bored curiosity to outright hostility. You'll learn later that new girls mean competition, and competition means less money in everyone's pocket. She'll need a name, says a redhead with arms so freckled they look like a map of distant stars. Can't work under whatever Bible name her mama gave her. This is true. Historians note that virtually every prostitute adopted a professional alias, partly for mystique, but mostly to protect whatever family they left behind from shame. You might become French Marie, even though you've never left Missouri, or Spanish Rose despite your Norwegian pallor. The madam, who insists you call her Miss Charlotte, gives you the tour while laying out rules faster than a tobacco auctioneer. No stealing from customers, no matter how drunk, no private arrangements. All money goes through the house first. No Negro customers in the main parlor. They use the back entrance, and Tuesdays only. No kissing on the mouth. That's for sweethearts, not business. No getting pregnant. Dr. Morrison comes Thursdays for prevention treatments. And she doesn't elaborate on what those treatments involve, but the other girls' expressions tell you enough. Each rule has teeth. Break them, and you're on the street faster than spit on a hot stove. The house takes 50% of your earnings, 60% if you're new and need training. Room and board come out of your half, plus charges for laundry, doctor visits, makeup, and those fancy dresses you're required to wear. It's sharecropping in silk stockings, and just like sharecroppers, you'll probably end up owing more than you earn. This here's the viewing parlor, Miss Charlotte continues, gesturing to the main room. Gentlemen callers arrive, have a drink or three, look over the merchandise, you smile, you flirt, you make them think you've been waiting all day just for them. Some houses make girls parade in their underthings, but we're classier than that. And the word classy does a lot of work in places like this. It's the difference between champagne and rot gut, between silk sheets and scratchy wool, between surviving and thriving. She shows you the private rooms upstairs, each one a miniature stage set for a different fantasy. The Oriental room, with its paper screens and incense burners. The French boudoir drowning in pink satin. The schoolroom. You don't ask about that one. Each room has a bed, naturally, but also a washstand with carbolic soap, stacks of Turkish towels, and rubber sheets that get boiled daily. Disease is the invisible enemy here, more dangerous than any violent customer. You'll start in the dance hall attached, Miss Charlotte explains, leading you down a hallway lined with daguerreotypes of girls who worked here before. Their eyes follow you, hollow and knowing. Get men to buy you drinks. You get colored water. They get the real stuff. Dance close, laugh at their jokes, make them want more. The wanting is what opens their wallets. You pass a door marked No Admittance and hear someone crying behind it. Miss Charlotte's face hardens. That's the medical room. Dr. Morrison's checking for the pox. Any girl who's sick gets quarantined until she's clean, or she doesn't finish. But you understand. Historians still debate whether frontier prostitutes had higher or lower rates of venereal disease than their eastern counterparts. But one thing's certain, a sick whore is a worthless whore in any time zone. The Oriental room's door opens, and a man emerges, buttoning his vest with the practiced efficiency of someone who's done this before. He tips his hat to Miss Charlotte, ignores you completely, and heads downstairs. Behind him, a young Chinese woman begins stripping the bed with mechanical precision. That's Lotus, Miss Charlotte says quietly. Doesn't speak English, which some men prefer. Came over thinking she'd marry a railroad worker. And the unfinished story hangs between you like smoke. You're led to a small room on the third floor, your new home. It's clean but sparse. An iron bedstead, a washstand, a wardrobe, and a small window overlooking the alley, where men piss against walls and cats fight over garbage. Miss Charlotte hands you a key. This locks from inside only. Never, ever let a customer follow you here. This room is yours alone, the only space in this whole building where you can just be whoever you really are. That first night arrives faster than a gunfighter's draw. You're squeezed into a borrowed corset that makes breathing feel like an Olympic sport. Your face painted with rice powder and rouge until you barely recognize the reflection staring back. Lotus helps you dress, her fingers quick and impersonal as she laces you into someone else's cast-off evening gown. It's emerald green satin, cut low enough to display goods you've never advertised before, and it smells faintly of another woman's perfume mixed with fear sweat. You stick with me tonight, says the freckled redhead from earlier, who introduces herself as Kansas City Kate. I'll show you the ropes. Keep the rough ones off you. First night's always the hardest, like losing your virginity all over again. Except this time, you know exactly how much it costs. She laughs, but it sounds like glass breaking in her throat. The dance hall throbs with noise. A three-piece band sawing away at popular tunes, men shouting over the music, glasses clinking in endless toasts to strikes and schemes. The air is thick enough to swim through, layered with cigar smoke, whiskey fumes, and the sour smell of bodies that haven't seen a bathtub since Christmas. You follow Kate through the crowd, trying to imitate her hip swaying walk while your stomach performs acrobatics that would impress a circus. See that one in the corner? Kate nods toward a man nursing a beer alone. Banker's clerk, comes in every payday, quick, clean, tips decent, good for a first timer. She steers you away from a group of miners fresh from the hills. Those boys haven't seen a woman in months. They'll ride you like a rented mule and haggle over the price after. Save them for when you've got thicker skin. The bartender, a mountain of a man everyone calls tiny, pours you a glass of colored water that's supposed to be whiskey. $1 a drink, he grunts, and the house gets 70 cents. You drink real liquor, you're too sloppy to work. Stay sober, stay alive. It's economics reduced to its brutal essence. Your body is the commodity. Your sobriety is quality control. Kate teaches you the codes, the invisible language that keeps this whole enterprise running. A fan fluttered near the face means you're available. Closed and tapped against your palm means you're taking a break. Dropped on the floor means you need help. Fast. Big Mike over there, she indicates a man built like a freight train. He's our protection. Customer gets rough. You scream his name. He'll come running and ask questions later. You practice smiling until your cheeks ache. Not the Sunday school smile you knew before, but something else. A promise and a lie wrapped in red lipstick. Men approach, circle, retreat. You're a carnival game they're not sure they want to play yet. Finally, the banker's clerk makes eye contact. Your heart pounds like hoofbeats on hard ground. Evening, miss. His voice is soft, almost apologetic. Might I buy you a refreshment? This is how it starts, with politeness that will evaporate upstairs like morning dew. You accept. Let him lead you to a small table where he makes nervous conversation about the weather, the latest gold strikes, anything but why he's really here. Historians note that many frontier prostitutes reported this strange dance of denial, men desperate to pretend they were courting rather than purchasing. Kate appears at your elbow. This young lady's new to our establishment, she tells the clerk with a wink that could strip paint. You'll be gentle with her, won't you, Harold? So his name is Harold. He flushes red as the velvet curtains and nods eagerly. The negotiation happens in code. He slides $2 silver across the table. Kate nods approval, and suddenly you're standing on legs that feel like water. The walk upstairs lasts forever, and no time at all. Harold's hand on your elbow is damp with nerves, or maybe that's your imagination. You pass other doors where rhythmic sounds and occasional laughter seep through thin walls. Someone's playing a harmonica badly. A woman's voice counts slowly in French, the ordinary soundtrack of extraordinary degradation. In the French room, Harold apparently has fantasies about Parisian sophistication. You mechanically follow the routine Kate demonstrated earlier. Money first, always, she'd insisted. Count it. Test the coins with your teeth if you must. A wooden nickel won't buy bread. Harold fumbles with his wallet, drops coins that roll under the bed. You both pretend not to notice his shaking hands. What happens next is both exactly what you expected and nothing like it at all. Harold is indeed gentle, almost pathetically so. He keeps apologizing, calling you Miss, even as he unhooks your corset with practiced fingers that betray his regular customer status. Historians still debate whether frontier prostitutes experienced more or less violence than modern sex workers. But tonight, at least, violence isn't your problem. Emptiness is. You learn to float somewhere above your body, watching this stranger use it like he's renting a horse. It's a skill the other girls talked about, going away inside your head while staying present enough to moan at the right moments. Harold finishes quickly with a grunt that sounds like disappointment. He's paying for infantasy, and you're both failing to deliver it. The parade of men becomes your nightly theater performance, each one a different character in this frontier drama. After Harold the apologetic banker comes Big Jim, a silver miner whose hands are so calloused they feel like tree bark against your skin. He wants you to call him Daddy and pretend to be innocent, a feat of acting that would challenge Sarah Bernhardt herself. Then there's the Chinese railroad foreman who pays extra for silence, conducting the entire transaction without a single word while his eyes speak volumes about loneliness that transcends language. You develop a taxonomy of customers, like a scientist cataloging beetles. The romantics bring wilted wildflowers and recite poetry they've memorized from dime novels, desperate to transform a business transaction into a love story. They're often the most dangerous. When reality crashes through their delusions, they blame you for the fall. The confessors treat you like a priest with breasts, spilling secrets about embezzled funds or murdered claim jumpers between thrusts. The punishers come specifically to hurt someone who can't hurt them back, though Big Mike usually spots these and charges them double as insurance. Thursday nights bring the soldiers from Fort Huachuca, their uniforms still dusty from patrol. They're young, most of them, faces smooth as peaches under their regulation mustaches. Indian fighters, they call themselves, though mostly they fight boredom and scorpions. One boy, he can't be more than 18, shakes so hard during his first visit that you have to undress him like a child. He cries afterward, missing his mother back in Ohio. You hold him, stroke his hair, charge him full price. The merchants arrive on Saturdays, flush with the week's profits. Mr. Goldstein from the dry goods store always brings French perfume as a gift, though you suspect he writes it off as a business expense. The judge comes monthly, wearing a false beard that fools nobody but allows everyone to maintain the fiction of propriety. Even the minister sneaks in through the back door, sweating guilt like a fever, paying extra for you to wear a high-necked nightgown and lie still as death. Every man's got his particular sickness, Kansas City. Kate explains one slow Tuesday afternoon, you're learning to play poker in the parlor, using dried beans for chips. Some want their mamas. Some want punishment for wanting their mamas. Some need you to be younger than you are. Some need you to be meaner than God. She deals another hand, with fingers surprisingly steady for someone who drinks laudanum like water. Trick is figuring out which fever they're burning with before they figure it out themselves. The Mexican vaqueros come in groups, pooling their money for one man while the others wait downstairs, singing corridos that make your heart ache for homes you've never seen. They're unfailingly polite, always removing their spurs without being asked, treating you with a courtly respect that makes the transaction almost bearable. One teaches you Spanish curse words that make Lotus giggle behind her fan. Apparently, she understands more English than she lets on. Then there are the travelers passing through, salesmen with their sample cases and practiced patter, journalists looking for authentic frontier color who pump you for stories while pumping away, European investors surveying their colonial prospects with the same calculating eye they use for everything else. A Russian prince, or so he claims, pays triple your usual rate just to waltz around the room naked while you play accordion. You don't play accordion, but for that money, you learn. Mainstream historians document how prostitutes served as unofficial therapists, nurses, and even bankers for their communities. What they don't mention is how you also become a keeper of the town's darkest secrets. The sheriff's deputy who likes to wear petticoats under his uniform. The bank president who can only perform while reciting the Lord's Prayer backward. The mayor's son who brings his best friend and insists you pretend not to notice they're more interested in each other than in you. Some nights, the variety feels like madness. You shift from virgin to dominatrix, to mother, to child, changing personas faster than a vaudeville quick-change artist. Your body becomes a stage where men act out dramas you only half understand. The Oriental businessman who pays just to smell your hair for an hour. The escaped slave turned buffalo soldier who needs you to tell him he's beautiful while tears stream down his face. The one-armed Civil War veteran who brings his own special harness and teaches you knots that would impress a sailor. They ain't paying for the poke. Big Mike tells you one night while walking you back from the privy. It's his job to protect the girls, but he offers philosophy for free. They're paying to be themselves for an hour. Man can't cry in a saloon, can't be weak in a mine shaft, can't be strange on Main Street. But here, he gestures at the glowing windows of the Velvet Slipper. Here, they can be whatever broken thing they really are. Historians still argue whether prostitution provided a necessary social valve in these pressure cooker boom towns, or whether it simply enabled the worst of masculine behavior. Standing in the middle of it, you don't have the luxury of academic distance. You just smile, spread your legs, and pretend to be whatever will get them out of the room fastest. The morning routine becomes your religion, each step a prayer for survival. You wake at noon with a mouth that tastes like you've been licking ashtrays, even though you don't smoke. It's the residue of a dozen men's cigars mixed with the laudanum drops you've started taking to sleep. The other girls taught you this trick. 3 drops in warm milk for rest, 5 for forgetting, 10 for floating away entirely. Nobody mentions what happens at 20. First comes the chamber pot, then the douching with carbolic acid that burns like hellfire, but might keep you from catching something that'll rot you from the inside out. Dr. Morrison swears by his patented mixture of mercury, arsenic, and cocaine, though you notice he always wears gloves when handling it. Preventative medicine, he calls it, charging each girl $2 a week for the privilege of poisoning herself slowly instead of quickly. You examine yourself in the cracked mirror, checking for sores, rashes, anything that might signal the beginning of the end. The girls have a gallows humor about it. The curse, the French disease, Cupid's measles, but everyone knows what syphilis means. First comes the chancre, then the rash, then years of slow decay until you're mad as a hatter and twice as useless. Lotus shows you how to check your mouth with a candle and hand mirror, looking for the telltale white patches that mean you've caught thrush from some unwashed customer. Breakfast is coffee strong enough to strip paint and whatever's left from last night's dinner, usually beans and biscuit, sometimes to salt pork if the house is flush. You eat mechanically, while Kansas City Kate reads aloud from the Police Gazette, entertaining everyone with lurid tales of murders and scandals from back east. Says here a Chicago madam poisoned 6 girls rather than let them leave for a competitor, she announces. Used arsenic in their face powder. Everyone unconsciously touches their own rouged cheeks. The house doctor isn't the only medical professional making rounds. There's also Madame Joe, who sells Chinese herbs from a carpet bag and whispers about monthly flowers in broken English. Her teas taste like boiled socks, but sometimes actually work. There's the Mexican curandera who'll pray over your belly while rubbing it with a raw egg, supposedly drawing out pregnancy before it takes hold. And there's Dirty Sally, who performs procedures in her back room that nobody talks about, but everyone knows about. $5 to make a problem go away, 10 if you're past the quickening. Had a girl once thought she could beat the system? Miss Charlotte tells you while you're helping inventory the liquor, kept her pregnancy secret, bound her belly tight, worked until she dropped the baby right in the parlor, bled out on my best Persian rug. She pauses, examining a bottle for watermarks. The baby lived 3 hours. We buried them both in the same box. Bad for business, pregnancy. Men don't want reminders of consequences. You learn the elaborate beauty rituals that keep you marketable. Rice powder to whiten your skin, because pale means refined. Belladonna drops to dilate your pupils. Never mind that it makes everything blurry. Lead-based rouge that slowly poisons you, but gives that consumptive glow men find attractive. Your hair gets henna'd monthly to hide the gray that's appearing, despite your young age. Stress ages you faster than calendar years out here. The mercury treatments are the worst. Dr. Morrison insists on injections for deep cleaning, claiming it prevents disease at the source. The needle goes places needles shouldn't go, and afterward, you shake like a wet dog for hours. Some girls' teeth start falling out after a few months of treatment. Others develop tremors that never stop. But it's better than the alternative, or so everyone keeps saying. You want to see something? Lotus asks one afternoon in her careful English. She leads you to her room and shows you a collection of small glass vials hidden behind loose wallboard. From home, she says. Opium, but pure, not like the doctor's medicine. This one for sleep, this one for forgetting, this one for... She makes a gesture you understand perfectly, for when you can't take anymore. Every girl has her exit strategy, and some are more final than others. Between customers, you douche again with wine vinegar, alum water, or carbolic acid, whatever's handy. The constant washing leaves you raw and bleeding, but infection is worse than discomfort. Some girls swear by a pessary of crocodile dung mixed with honey, supposedly an ancient Egyptian contraceptive. You try it once out of desperation, but can't get past the smell. Historians debate whether frontier prostitutes had access to better or worse birth control than their modern counterparts. But standing over a basin of carbolic acid for the fourth time today, the academic discussion seems moot. The laudanum bottle on your nightstand glows like amber in the afternoon sun. Just a few drops, you tell yourself, just enough to smooth the edges, but the edges keep getting sharper, requiring more smoothing. Soon you're floating through your nights in an opium haze, present enough to work, but absent enough to survive. It's a delicate balance, too little, and you feel everything, too much, and you can't perform. The sweet spot is a narrow ledge over an abyss. By evening, you're painted and powdered again, ready for another night's performance. The face in the mirror looks nothing like the farm girl who stepped off that stagecoach. This creature has knowing eyes and a practiced smile, moves like smoke and laughs like breaking bells. She's someone you're becoming or someone you're hiding behind. After enough laudanum, the distinction stops mattering. Miss Charlotte rules the velvet slipper like Catherine the Great ruled Russia, with an iron fist and a velvet glove, and a talent for making cruelty look like kindness. You learn quickly that she's not just a madam, but an empire builder, her kingdom constructed from female flesh and male weakness. Every morning, she holds court in her private office, a shrine to aspirational respectability with its mahogany desk, leather-bound ledgers, and a portrait of Queen Victoria hanging beside a nude Venus. Business is mathematics, ladies. She lectures while tallying the previous night's receipts. Her fingers fly across the abacus faster than a telegraph operator. Know your numbers or the numbers will own you. She's teaching because ignorant whores are unprofitable whores, but also because knowledge is another kind of chain. Once you understand how deep in debt you are, escape seems as impossible as flying to the moon. The house economics are brutal in their simplicity. You charge $2 to $5 per customer, depending on their wants and your willingness. The house takes half immediately. From your half comes room and board, $10 weekly, laundry, $2, doctor visits, $2, protection fees to Big Mike, $1, and those fancy dresses you're required to wear, $20 to $50 each, bought on credit from Miss Charlotte's personal collection. Then there's makeup, perfume, monthly treatments, and the occasional fine for breaking house rules. Most girls owe more each month than they earn. It's a company store with silk sheets. Kansas City. Kate explains while teaching you to doctor the account books in your favor. She keeps us in debt to keep us in line, but two can play that game. She shows you how to skim, pocketing tips without reporting them, negotiating side deals for special services that don't go through the house, even selling stolen moments of genuine affection to the loneliest customers who pay premium for the illusion of love. Miss Charlotte's past remains mysterious, though rumors swirl like smoke. Some say she was a Confederate spy who seduced Union generals for secrets. Others claim she murdered her husband in New Orleans and fled west with his fortune. The only certainty is that she arrived 5 years ago with enough capital to buy the building outright and enough blackmail material to ensure nobody questioned her methods. She knows which judge visits monthly, which banker has unusual tastes, which minister quotes scripture while sinning. Information is her real currency. Power isn't between your legs, girls. She tells you during one of her philosophical moods. It's between your ears. Men think with their pizzles, but women must think with their minds. She's standing at her window, watching the sheriff accept his weekly envelope of protection money. I own half this town, not because I spread my legs, but because I remember who spread theirs and for whom. And her rooms occupy the entire fourth floor, a luxury apartment that would fit in any San Francisco mansion. Persian rugs thick enough to lose a toe in, genuine Tiffany lamps, a bathtub with hot running water, almost unheard of in a frontier town. She entertains there sometimes, hosting poker games for the town's elite where thousands of dollars change hands. The girls aren't invited to these gatherings, but you serve drinks and catch glimpses of how the other half lives. Historians note that successful madams often became society fixtures, their money eventually washing away the stain of its earning. But her benevolence has fangs. Cross Miss Charlotte, and you'll find yourself working the cribs, those airless boxes where the lowest prostitutes service anyone for 4 bits a throw. Or worse, you'll wake up on a train heading nowhere with empty pockets and a blackened reputation that follows you like smoke. She keeps files on every girl who's ever worked for her, detailed records of their real names, their families, their secrets. It's insurance against rebellion. She sold Chinese Sue to a traveling brothel. Lotus whispers one night. Sue tried to leave, take her savings. Next morning, gone. Men came in the night, took her still in nightdress. The other girls nod knowingly. Everyone has a story about someone who challenged Miss Charlotte and lost. The message is clear. You can leave vertically or horizontally, but you can't leave with your dignity or your savings intact. Yet for all her cruelty, she protects what's hers. When a customer beats one of the girls bloody, Miss Charlotte has Big Mike break both his arms and dump him at the edge of town. When the Temperance Crusaders march on the house, she meets them at the door with a shotgun and a list of their husbands' visiting schedules. When the new territorial governor threatens to enforce anti-prostitution laws, she sends him daguerreotypes that ensure he finds other priorities. I'm not running a charity. She tells you one evening while you're helping her count money. The bills smell like perfume and desperation. But I'm not running a slaughterhouse either. My girls are investments. I protect my investments. It's the closest thing to maternal warmth you'll get from her, and somehow that makes it worse. Even her kindness is calculated, another entry in her ledgers. She teaches by example how to read men like account books, how to turn weakness into profit, how to build an empire from society's discards. Some historians paint frontier madams as early feminists, women who seized power in a man's world. But watching Miss Charlotte count her money while one of her girls coughs blood in the medical room, you understand that power corrupted equally, regardless of gender. She's not liberating anyone. She's just figured out how to be the house instead of the player. The money flows through your fingers like water through a sieve, always coming, never staying. You keep your earnings in a cigar box under a loose floorboard, counting and recounting the coins like a rosary of hope. $20 saved means a train ticket out. 50 means a new start somewhere else. 100 means you could pretend to be respectable, maybe open a boarding house or millinery shop. But the numbers never add up right, no matter how many times you calculate. First rule of whore economics, Kansas City. Kate explains while showing you her hidden stash, is never let them know what you got. Second rule is always have 3 times what you need, because sure as sunrise, something's gonna cost you. Her savings are sewn into her corset, tucked into hollow boot heels, even hidden inside carefully gutted books. Lost everything twice before I learned, once to a thieving customer, once to a house fire. Now I spread it around like seeds. Sad. You start keeping your own books and code, using a system Lotus taught you based on Chinese numbers, income on the left, expenses on the right, and the gulf between them growing wider each month. That new dress Miss Charlotte insisted you needed, $30. The extra mercury treatments after a suspicious rash, $10. The abortion. Dirty Sally performed when your monthly flowers stopped, $5 and a week of bleeding that cost you another 20 in lost wages. Some girls try to beat the system through side hustles. There's blackmail, of course, threatening to tell wives about husbands, employers about employees. But that's dangerous. Men kill women for less out here, where justice is as flexible as a politician's promises. Safer to sell information to other houses, passing along which customers tip well, which ones get violent, which ones have peculiar tastes worth charging extra for. You want to know the real money? Big Mike tells you one night while walking you to the necessary. It ain't in what happens in the bedrooms. It's in what happens at the card tables. He's right. The house runs high-stakes poker games where fortunes change hands faster than you change sheets. Miners flush with gold dust, cattle barons celebrating drives, railway speculators drunk on expansion dreams. They all come to lose money in Miss Charlotte's parlor while pretty girls deal cards and pour drinks. You learn to deal faro, monte, and poker, your fingers getting clever with cards the same way they've gotten clever with other things. The house employs professional gamblers who split their winnings with Miss Charlotte, but sometimes they let you sit in on smaller games. Men lose more when they're trying to impress a half-dressed woman, and your cut of those losses adds precious dollars to your escape fund, but every gain gets balanced by a loss. You chip a tooth on a violent customer's belt buckle, the dentist charges $5 to file it smooth. Your best dress gets ruined by a drunk who vomits champagne and oysters, another $30 on credit. The photographer who takes French postcards offers you $10 for an afternoon's work, but those images will circulate forever, following you like ghosts if you ever try to become respectable. The other girls share their financial wisdom like recipes for disaster. Never trust a bank, says Diamond Dolly, who lost her savings when the miners and merchants went bust. Keep it in gold or silver, something you can carry when you run. But gold is heavy and silver tarnishes, and both can be stolen as easily as paper money. There's no safe way to save when your entire existence is temporary. Some girls invest in property, tiny parcels of land on the edge of town, bought under fake names or through frontmen. The idea is to wait for the town to grow, for their worthless scrubland to become valuable Main Street real estate. I got 3 lots, brags Baltimore Betty. Gonna build proper houses someday, rent to proper families. She doesn't mention that the sheriff could seize her property any time, claiming it was bought with immoral earnings. The Chinese girls have their own system, pooling money in informal banks called hui each month. One girl gets the whole pot to send home or save for escape. It requires trust, a commodity rarer than gold in places like this. You watch them count their coins together, whispering in Cantonese about families they're supporting across the ocean, children they'll never see, husbands who may have already taken new wives. Historians estimate the average frontier prostitute earned between $100 $300 monthly, good money, when shopgirls made $10. But they don't calculate the hidden costs, the diseases that steal your ability to work, the laudanum habit that eats your earnings, the depression that makes you give away money just to feel human kindness. They don't factor in the nights you pay men to leave you alone, buying your own body back for a few hours of peace. By month's end, your cigar box holds $12.37. The train ticket costs $20. You're moving backward, drowning in debt despite working every night, despite smiling until your face aches, despite doing things that would make your mother weep. The arithmetic of your life is written in red ink, and no amount of creative accounting can balance these books. Money ain't freedom, Miss Charlotte says when she catches you crying over your ledger. Money's just different chains, but chains you choose are better than chains chosen for you. She's probably right, but that doesn't make the numbers add up any better. Tomorrow you'll smile, spread, and save. Tonight you count your coins and calculate how many more men you'll need to endure before you can afford to stop enduring. The scream cuts through Tuesday night like a rusty saw through bone. You're with a regular, the hardware store owner, who likes you to call him Papa when the sound freezes both of you mid-transaction. It's not the playful shriek of rough play or the practiced moan of pleasure. This is terror distilled to its purest form, and every working girl in the house knows the difference. Stay here, you tell the hardware man, grabbing your wrapper. He's already reaching for his pants, fear replacing lust faster than a snuffed candle. Violence is bad for everyone's business. You rush into the hallway, where other girls peek out from doorways like prairie dogs sensing a hawk. Kansas City Kate appears with blood splattered across her chemise, her face white as fresh paper. "It's Sweet Caroline," she gasps. "That new miner, the one with the scar. Oh God, he's cutting her." Big Mike thunders up the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. Behind him comes Miss Charlotte with her pearl-handled revolver, still in her evening dress from entertaining the mayor. You follow the crowd to room 7, where the door hangs crooked on its hinges. Inside, Sweet Caroline huddles in the corner, holding her face while blood seeps between her fingers. The miner stands over her with a straight razor, drunk on whiskey and his own power. "Whore gave me the pox," he slurs. waving the blade. Gonna mark her so everyone knows she's diseased. It's a lie. Caroline gets checked weekly like everyone else, but logic doesn't live in rooms like this. Big Mike moves faster than a man his size should, the weighted club in his hand connecting with the miner's skull with a sound like a melon dropping. The razor clatters across the floor, followed by the miner himself. Dr. Morrison arrives within minutes, his medical bag clicking with glass vials. Carolyn's face is laid open from ear to chin, the kind of wound that ends careers even if it heals. While he stitches, Miss Charlotte conducts business. Mike, take this trash to the edge of town. If he comes back, kill him. She turns to the assembled girls. Everyone back to work. Show's over. But the show is never really over. Violence hangs in these rooms like old smoke, and every girl has her collection of scars, visible and otherwise. You've been lucky so far, just bruises, a black eye or two, fingernails, marks on your throat. Nothing that powder and dim lighting can't hide. Other girls haven't been as fortunate. Had my ribs broke twice. Diamond Dolly tells you the next morning while you're washing bloodstains from the hallway floor. Once by a cavalry officer who said I looked like his dead wife. Once by a claim jumper who thought I'd stolen his poke. Both times. Had to keep working while they healed. Try breathing in a corset with cracked ribs sometime. The violence comes in varieties, like a menu of misery. There are the biters who leave teeth marks like brands. The chokers who squeeze until you see stars, getting off on your panic. The burners who bring lit cigars to bed for reasons you don't want to understand. Some men arrive already angry, looking for someone weaker to punish for all their failures. Others discover their violence mid-act, surprised by their own capacity for cruelty. Never let them tie you up, Lotus advises in her careful English. Rope is for hanging, not loving. She shows you faint scars around her wrists, perfectly spaced like brutal bracelets. Man in San Francisco, he pay extra for binding. Leave me 3 days like that. Almost died. Her matter-of-fact tone makes it worse somehow. Violence reduced to just another occupational hazard, like dishpan hands or miner's lung. Miss Charlotte institutes new policies after Caroline's attack. A bell system connecting every room to Big Mike's station, a 2-drink maximum for new customers, a rough list shared between houses, naming men who've hurt working girls. But policies are just paper against passion, and then every girl knows that when a door closes, you're alone with whatever walks in on 2 legs. Some girls fight back. There's Deadwood Sue, who keeps a derringer in her garter, though she's only fired it once, into the ceiling to scare off a drunk. Others rely on hidden weapons, hat pins filed sharp, rings that turn backward to reveal tiny blades. Even a girl in Denver who supposedly killed a customer with poisoned lipstick, though that might be frontier legend. The fear's worse than the pain. Kansas City Kate philosophizes while demonstrating how to break a whiskey bottle to create a weapon. Pain ends, fear just keeps growing, makes you flinch before they even touch you, and when they see you flinch, she doesn't finish, but you understand. Fear is blood in the water, and these men are sharks. Historians debate whether frontier prostitution was more or less dangerous than modern sex work. They cite murder statistics, newspaper accounts, court records showing violence against soiled doves. What they can't quantify is the constant vigilance, the way you assess each customer like a potentially rabid dog. Is he too drunk? Too angry? Too quiet? Your survival depends on reading signals most people never learn to see. But for all the precautions, violence finds its way in. 2 months after Carolyn's cutting, they find Sage Hen Sally dead in her crib, strangled with her own stocking. The sheriff barely investigates. Dead whores don't vote or pay taxes. A month later, a traveling prostitute named Mexican Mary disappears entirely, leaving only blood and questions. The town continues its business, stepping over these casualties like puddles in the street. The sisterhood saves you more than any gun or knife ever could. It's an unspoken network of survival, stronger than blood ties, because it's forged in the same fires of necessity. When Colorado Jane's regular customer starts showing signs of syphilis, word spreads through the house faster than wildfire. Every girl suddenly has women's troubles when he comes calling. When a new girl arrives fresh off the stage, shaking with fear and farm girl innocence, you all take turns teaching her the codes that might keep her alive. We got our own telegraph, Kansas City. Kate explains while showing the latest arrival how to hide money in her corset bones. Better than Western Union and twice as fast. She's right. Information flows between the working girls like water finding its level. Which doctor will perform abortions without asking questions? Which pharmacist sells laudanum without a prescription? Which customers tip in gold dust versus those who try to pay with promises? The warning systems evolve from bitter experience. 3 sharp raps on the wall means a customer is getting violent. A particular cough in the hallway signals that the law is sniffing around. Dropped hairpins arranged in patterns outside doors convey messages. 1 pin means the customer is irregular. 2 means he's new and nervous. 3 means watch out. You learn to read these signs like scripture, your survival depending on interpretation. Never trust a whore, Miss Charlotte likes to say, but always believe one. It sounds like contradiction, but you understand the distinction. Business makes you competitors, fighting for the best customers, the most tips, the favor of the house. But survival makes you allies. When Frenchie's customer blacks her eye, every girl accidentally spills drinks on him for weeks until he stops coming around. When Baltimore Betty gets pregnant, despite all precautions, you all chip in for Dirty Sally's services, knowing next time it could be you. The codes extend beyond safety to small acts of rebellion. You develop a whole vocabulary of gestures performed behind customers' backs. Rolled eyes for the braggart claiming to own half of Colorado. Crossed fingers for the married man swearing he's single. Obscene hand signals for the preacher who quotes scripture during sex. This secret language bonds you, makes you more than just occupied bodies in adjacent rooms. Some alliances run deeper. Lotus and China Doll share everything: money, medicine, even customers when one is too sick to work. They arrived on the same ship, survived the same horrors, and now protect each other with fierce devotion. In China, we say eating bitter together makes sisters. Lotus explains, "Here, we eat more than bitter. We eat poison and call it candy. Makes us more than sisters." The older girls mother the younger ones with tough love. Diamond Dolly keeps a running tally of which girls owe her favors. She covered your shift when you had the flux. You'll cover hers when her monthly comes. Big Nose Nellie, despite her fearsome reputation, spends her off hours teaching illiterate girls to read using dime novels and wanted posters. "Can't sign a contract you can't read," she insists. "Can't escape a life you can't imagine past." Even the house's official policies can't break these bonds. When Miss Charlotte institutes fines for gossiping, you simply develop more elaborate codes. When she forbids girls from visiting each other's rooms during work hours, you meet in the necessary or the laundry room, sharing information between the washing lines. The madam might own your bodies, but she can't own your solidarity. "Saved my life more than once," sweet Caroline says, her voice still rough from screaming, the scar on her face healing into a pink river. "When I first started, didn't know about checking for weapons. Ruby felt something off about a customer, warned me, found a skinning knife in his boot." She touches her scar. "Could have been worse than this. Could have been dead." The protection extends beyond the house. When you venture into town for supplies, you travel in groups, watching each other's backs against temperance crusaders who'd spit on you as soon as look at you. When one girl gets arrested for public drunkenness, others pool money for bail. When the doctor refuses to treat Chickasaw Mary because she's Indian, you find a veterinarian who'll stitch wounds for cash and silence. But the deepest sisterhood emerges in the quiet hours between shifts, when the masks come off and you're just exhausted women trying to survive. You braid each other's hair and share letters from home, carefully edited to hide your true profession. You pass around treasured books, teach each other songs from your childhoods, share recipes for face cream and abortion tea. In these moments, you're not whores or competitors, you're just women bearing witness to each other's pain. Historians often focus on the competition between prostitutes, the hierarchies and conflicts. What they miss is how shared degradation creates unbreakable bonds. Every woman in this house knows what you taste at night, what you wash off in the morning, what you swallow to forget. That knowledge creates a sisterhood beyond words, a recognition that passes between you in glances, touches, silence. When I die, Kansas City. Kate says one opium soft evening. Want you girls to write my mother. Tell her I died of consumption, respectable like. Tell her I was a seamstress or a teacher. Give her something clean to remember. You all nod, understanding the request. It's not the first such pact you've made, won't be the last. In this life, sisters are the only ones who wash your body honest and lie about it after. The law in this town wears a badge, but takes its orders from whoever pays best, and Miss Charlotte's envelopes are always fat with consideration. Sheriff Daniels visits the house twice weekly, once for his inspection that consists mainly of bourbon and breasts, once to collect his percentage of the week's take. He's a small man made smaller by his appetites, with watery eyes that never quite focus and hands that shake until his third drink steadies them. Cost of doing business, Miss Charlotte explains while counting out bills in her office. You're helping with the books tonight, learning the legitimate face of an illegitimate enterprise. 20% to the sheriff, 10 to the judge, 5 to the mayor's campaign fund. Think of it as taxation without representation. She seals each envelope with red wax, the color of blood or passion, depending on your mood. The arrangement works until it doesn't. Some deputy gets righteous, usually young and fresh from back east, with ideas about law and order that haven't been beaten out of him yet. Or the temperance crusaders gain enough steam to pressure politicians into performative crackdowns. Then comes the theater of justice, raids performed with all the subtlety of a medicine show. Ladies, ladies, Big Mike bellows one Thursday midnight, banging on doors. Law's coming, decent up. It's the signal for a raid, and the house erupts into practiced chaos. Customers flee through windows, down back stairs, some still pulling on pants or clutching shoes. You throw on your most modest wrapper and grab the Bible. Miss Charlotte insists every girl keep visible, props for the performance about to unfold. The deputies storm in like they're capturing Quantrill's raiders, making noise and fury while carefully avoiding actual damage to the property. They know who pays their salaries, even if they have to pretend otherwise. You and the other girls are herded into the parlor, clutching your Bibles and trying to look reformed. Some of the newer girls cry real tears. They haven't learned yet that this is just another show. Gentleman's agreement, the sheriff announces, reading from a paper he can barely see through his whiskey haze. You ladies are under arrest for violation of territorial statute. He drones on while his men pocket small valuables when they think nobody's looking. The arrest means a wagon ride to the jail, a $50 fine paid by Miss Charlotte, and back to work by dawn. The newspapers get their headline, the crusaders get their victory, the law gets its cut, and nothing really changes. But sometimes the protection fails. When the territorial governor visits, bringing federal marshals who can't be bought with local money, the raids turn real. Girls get actual jail time, 30 days of sleeping on stone, eating gruel, being visited by church ladies who pray over you while secretly thrilling at being so close to sin. Worse are the medical examinations, performed in public to protect public health, but really to humiliate and control. Stood me naked in the courthouse square, Baltimore Betty recalls, her voice flat as old beer. Doctor poking at me while good Christian women watched and tisked, checking for disease, they said, but half the town council got the pox from their own wives, brought home by wandering husbands, nobody checking them in the square. The corruption runs deeper than simple bribery. Judge Thornton owns shares in 3 brothels through shell companies. Mayor Hutchins's election campaign was funded entirely by madams who wanted ordinances relaxed. The district attorney frequents a specialty house catering to men who like pain with their pleasure. Everyone knows everything, and that mutual blackmail keeps the system stable as a 3-legged stool. Law's just another customer, Deputy Collins tells you one night while waiting for his favorite girl to finish with another client. He's one of the honest ones, which means he only takes bribes for looking away, not for active participation. Pays different currency is all. Instead of spreading your legs, you spread your influence. Same transaction, different commodity. You learn which laws matter and which are just paper. The ordinance against prostitution, ignored unless someone important complains. The law against selling liquor on Sunday, enforced ruthlessly because the churches have more political power than the brothels. The statute requiring health inspections for working girls, enforced monthly, with fees that somehow end up in the inspector's pocket rather than city coffers. Some girls try to use the law for protection, reporting violent customers or wage theft. They learn quickly that justice has a price they can't afford. Went to the sheriff once. Sage. Hen Sally told you before she died. Customer robbed me, took a week's earnings. Sheriff said proving theft from a whore was like proving rain from a cloud, impossible to tell which drops belonged where. The customer faced no consequences. Sally got evicted from her crib for causing trouble. The dance between law and disorder creates its own ecosystem. Lawyers who specialize in defending working girls, charging fees that keep their clients perpetually indebted. Bail bondsmen who know every madam by name and every girl by earning potential. Court clerks who alter records for a price, changing prostitution to disturbing the peace to protect reputations that might one day become respectable. There's legal and there's legal. Miss Charlotte philosophizes during one of her teaching moods. We're illegal enough to be controlled, legal enough to be taxed. Perfect balance for everyone except the girls actually spreading their legs. She's reviewing the month's protection payments, numbers that would support several families, but barely buy tolerance for one whorehouse. Historians document the official legal structures of frontier towns, the ordinances and statutes meant to regulate vice. What they miss is how the law itself became corrupted by what it was meant to control, how every badge and gavel had its price, how justice wore a blindfold not for impartiality, but to avoid seeing who was paying her bills. Love arrives in this place like snow in July, unexpected, disorienting, and probably doomed from the start. You've trained yourself to perform passion without feeling it, to moan names you'll forget by morning, to whisper endearments that evaporate like spit on a hot stove. But then steps Thomas, and in everything you thought you knew about keeping your heart locked away crumbles like old newspaper. He's not handsome in the classical sense, nose broken from a mining accident, hands scarred from dynamite work, clothes that never quite lose the smell of deep earth. But his eyes are kind, the color of creek water in sunlight, and he looks at you like you're a person instead of a purchase. First time he visits, he spends half his paid hour just talking about his claim, his dreams of striking silver, his mother back in Pennsylvania who thinks he's working for the railroad. Don't get moon-eyed over customers. Kansas City. Kate warns when she catches you smiling at nothing. That way lies madness and empty pockets. They all seem different until they're zipping their flies and counting change. But Thomas doesn't seem like the others. He brings you small gifts, not the calculated offerings of regulars trying to buy favor, but thoughtful things. A chunk of rose quartz from his mine, a dime novel he thought you'd enjoy, fresh apples when everyone else is eating preserved fruit. The dangerous thing is how he makes you remember who you were before. When he talks about Pennsylvania autumns, you tell him about harvesting corn on your family's farm. When he describes his plans for after the big strike, you catch yourself imagining a little house with curtains you'd sew yourself. He calls you by your real name, Sarah, not the stage name Miss Charlotte assigned. In his arms, you're not Velvet Violet, the exotic seductress. You're just Sarah, and that's enough. Seen this before, Big Nose Nellie says, watching you fix your hair extra careful on nights Thomas might visit. Girl thinks she's found her salvation in pants and promises. Man thinks he's rescuing some fallen angel. Both end up broken when reality kicks down the door. Her cynicism tastes like medicine, bitter, but probably good for you. Still, you can't stop the flutter when you hear his voice downstairs. Other girls have their own romantic disasters to share. There's Chicago Sal, who fell for a banker who promised to divorce his wife right until his wife showed up with a horsewhip and the sheriff. Diamond Dolly loved a gambling man who cleaned out her savings and disappeared on the morning train. Even Miss Charlotte, in her whiskey moments, hints at some devastating romance that drove her to become steel instead of flesh. Love's a luxury we can't afford. She tells you when she notices you've been refusing other customers on nights Thomas might appear. Every turned-down client is money lost, and romantic notions don't pay rent. You want to play house? Do it on your own time and your own dime. But Thomas pays triple your usual rate just to lie together talking, so she tolerates what she calls your temporary insanity. The thing that makes it worse is that Thomas seems to love you back, or at least loves who he thinks you are. He's constructed his own version of your story. Forced into this life by tragic circumstances, maintained virginal purity of spirit despite bodily corruption, waiting for a good man to restore you to respectability. You don't correct his fairy tale because the truth that you've been with hundreds of men, that you can't remember all their faces, that some nights you enjoyed it, would shatter his rescue fantasy. He's planning to propose. You tell Lotus one evening, your voice mixing joy and terror. Says once he strikes silver, he'll buy me out of this life, make an honest woman of me. And Lotus looks at you with ancient sadness in young eyes. Honest woman, she repeats slowly. What is honest? You honest now, honest about what men want, what they pay. He want you be different honest, pretend past never happen. Which more lie? The other customers notice your distraction. Some complain to Miss Charlotte that you're not as enthusiastic as before. Your earnings drop because your heart isn't in the performance anymore. You catch yourself thinking about Thomas during intimate moments with others, using his imagined presence to get through acts that now feel more degrading because you have something to compare them to. Love hasn't freed you. It's made your chains visible. Then comes the night Thomas doesn't show. You wait, dressed in your best, least whorish dress, watching the door like a spaniel waiting for its master. He doesn't come the next night either, or the next. Finally, Kansas City Kate brings news. There was a cave-in at the Molly Pitcher mine. 3 men trapped. 2 survived. Thomas wasn't one of them. The grief hits like a physical blow, knocking air from your lungs and sense from your world. You've lost your escape fantasy, your reminder of who you used to be, your proof that you were still capable of feeling something clean. The other girls rally around you with the particular kindness of those who've lost their own impossible loves. They cover your shifts, bring you laudanum for the pain, hold you while you sob out grief that tastes like grave dirt. Better to have loved and lost, Baltimore Betty quotes, trying to comfort. But Shakespeare never worked in a whorehouse, never had to spread his legs while mourning the only person who'd seen him as human. The cruelest irony is that you can't even claim widow's grief. What were you to Thomas but a whore he was fond of? His family back in Pennsylvania will mourn a son. You mourn a future that never existed except in whispered plans between paid embraces. Love in this life is a luxury you paid for with hope, and the bill always comes due with interest. The mirror tells truths that customers' lies can't soften. Where once you saw youth's bloom, now lines creep like cracks in old leather. Your breasts, once high and proud as new bread, sag from the weight of too many hands. The strawberry birthmark on your shoulder that men once called charming now looks like what it is, a blemish on damaged goods. You're 26 but feel 40, aged in dog years by this life that consumes women like kindling. Powder thicker, smile wider, big nose Nellie advises, watching you prepare for the evening. She's the house veteran at 35, ancient by brothel standards, surviving on reputation and specialized skills that younger girls won't perform. Lamplight forgives much, and whiskey forgives more. But time, she doesn't finish. Time forgives nothing and no one, especially not women who trade on their looks. The hierarchy shifts as subtly as shadows. New girls arrive monthly, fresh-faced and firm-bodied, smelling of hope instead of laudanum. Customers' eyes slide past you to linger on these novelties. Your regular clients develop wandering interests. Even reliable Harold the banker requests someone new one Tuesday, the rejection sharp as a slap. You're not old yet, but you're no longer new, and in this business, novelty is currency. It's the Gilded Age economics, Miss Charlotte explains during one of her lectures. She's been reading newspapers again, fancying herself a businesswoman instead of a flesh peddler. Supply and demand. Fresh supply arrives. Demand for aging product decreases. Smart girls diversify their portfolios. By diversify, she means develop specialties that don't depend on taut skin, everything from elaborate role play to acts that would make a sailor blush. You watch the older girls navigate this transition with varying success. Diamond Dolly becomes the house mother, teaching new girls tricks while skimming their tips. Baltimore Betty specializes in comforting widowers, her maternal bulk and patient listening earning steady income from lonely men. But others fade like flowers pressed in books, there one day, gone the next, their rooms reassigned before the sheets cool. Where do old whores go? You ask Lotus one opium-soft evening. She's teaching you to embroider, a skill that might matter if your fingers weren't already ruined by carbolic acid. Same place as old horses, she replies. Glue factory, different kind. Her gallows humor masks real fear. You've both seen what happens to women who age out without exit strategies. The options narrow like a funnel. Some marry customers, usually older men wanting a nurse more than a wife, willing to overlook past indiscretions for present convenience. Others scrape together enough to buy small businesses, though most fail within months because respectable suppliers won't deal with former prostitutes. A few become madams themselves, perpetuating the cycle with fresh crops of desperate girls. Knew a girl in Denver. Kansas City, Kate tells you, while demonstrating how to minimize crow's feet with careful powder application. Saved for 10 years, bought a boarding house. Week later, church ladies organized a boycott. No decent person would rent from her, lost everything, ended up in the cribs giving $2 pokes to railroad workers. The moral: even money can't wash away this stain. The madam's patience with aging merchandise has limits. She starts scheduling you for afternoon shifts when harsh sunlight is less forgiving. Your room gets moved from the second floor to the third, where cheaper customers climb for budget pleasures. The new dresses go to younger girls, while you make do with altered hand-me-downs that smell of other women's desperation. Desperation drives innovation. You learn to read tarot cards, telling fortunes between fornication. The cards mean nothing, but men pay extra to hear their futures predicted by someone who has none. You develop a specialty in French conversation, talking dirty in broken French you learned from a New Orleans girl. You even try writing pornographic stories for men who like their titillation literary. Anything to remain valuable as your primary commodity depreciates. The thing about aging, Big Nose Nellie philosophizes, while corseting herself into an approximation of curves, is it happens twice as fast in here. Every year ages you to. By 30, you're used up as a mind-out claim. She pauses, studying her face in merciless morning light. Unless you're smart, unless you plan, unless you get out before out gets you. But planning requires hope, and hope is another luxury you can't afford. Your escape fund, never robust, dwindles as earnings decrease. The laudanum that helps you sleep costs more as you need increasing doses. That persistent cough that started last winter won't leave, and Dr. Morrison's treatments grow expensive as they grow ineffective. Time accelerates, each day stealing more than it gives. The younger girls avoid you now, fearing your future like a contagious disease. They cluster together, bright and shiny as new coins, while you and the other fading flowers occupy the margins. It's nature's way, the old making room for the young, but knowing that doesn't make it easier when you're the one being pushed aside. You start to understand why some girls simply disappear one night, leaving nothing but debts and rumors. The river's always there, patient and final. So is laudanum, if you save enough for a permanent dose. These thoughts creep in during the gray hours before dawn, when the weight of accumulated men presses down like mountain rock, when the mirror shows a stranger wearing your tired face. 30's the new 20, you tell yourself, practicing smiles that no longer reach your eyes. But in this life, 30 might as well be dead. The clock in the parlor ticks louder each night, counting down to an ending you can't predict but can feel approaching like winter wind through cracks in the wall. The escape attempts haunt the house like ghosts of futures that never were. Every few months, another girl tries to claw her way back to respectability, and you all watch with the morbid fascination of prisoners seeing someone test the fence. Most come crawling back within weeks, beaten by a world that won't let them forget what they've been. But some, the lucky few, vanish into new lives like smoke into sky. Patience and planning, whispers Portland Jane, who's been saving for 3 years. She shows you her cash, train tickets purchased one at a time, a forged letter of recommendation from a fictional employer, hair dye to change her distinctive red to anonymous brown. Can't just run, got to run to something with a story nobody will question. She's been practicing a new accent, studying etiquette books, building a fictional past as a war widow seeking employment back east. The successful escapes follow patterns. First comes the geographic distance. You can't become respectable in a town where every man might recognize your naked body. Then new identity, complete with tragic backstory to explain your lack of family or references. Finally, a legitimate job that pays enough to survive without supplementing income on your back. It's a tightrope walk over a pit of revelation and ruin. Saw Mary Margaret make it out. Baltimore Betty tells you one evening, her voice tinged with wonder. Remember her? Blonde with the lazy eye, saved enough to attend normal school in Iowa, became a school teacher, heard she married the principal, has 3 children who'll never know their mother used to service cowboys at $2 a poke. The story spreads through the house like gospel, proof that resurrection is possible. But for every Mary Margaret, there are dozens of failures, girls who get recognized by former customers in their new towns, others who can't shake the laudanum habit or the night terrors, some who simply can't adjust to the suffocating restrictions of respectable femininity after years of relative freedom in the demimonde. They return defeated, often worse off than before, having spent their savings on a dream that curdled like milk and sun. Tried it once, Kansas City. Kate admits during a rare vulnerable moment. Got as far as St. Louis, found work in a factory. Week later, foreman figured out what I'd been, gave me a choice, spread for him and his friends, or get fired and blacklisted. She lights a cigarette with shaking hands. Least here I get paid for it. Least here I got some say in who and when. The madam actively discourages escape attempts, though she can't forbid them outright, slavery being officially illegal, even if debt bondage amounts to the same thing. She shares cautionary tales of girls who left and met horrible fates, murdered by jealous wives who discovered their husbands' past and indiscretions, driven to suicide by social ostracism, dying in childbirth without proper medical care, because no respectable doctor would treat a former whore. Freedom's an illusion, she preaches. You think those factory girls are free? Those shop clerks? Those proper wives? They're all selling something. Their labor, their bodies, their souls. At least you girls are honest about the transaction. It's a compelling argument when you're tired and debt-heavy, when the outside world seems as hostile as a winter blizzard. Some girls try incremental escapes. They start small businesses while still working: laundry services, seamstressing, baking. The idea is to build legitimate income streams that might eventually support them fully. But running a business while servicing men all night proves exhausting, and most ventures fail from neglect or sabotage by competitors who don't want whores encroaching on respectable commerce. The suffragettes say we're victims of male oppression. Deadwood Sue scoffs, reading from a pamphlet someone left at the house. Say we should be rescued and reformed, but they don't want us in their movement, don't want us voting alongside their pure selves. We're symbols to them, not sisters. The bitter truth is that most reform movements want to save fallen women in theory while shunning them in practice. You start your own escape plan, modest but persistent, learning to type on a machine one of the girls inherited from a customer, practicing penmanship until your letters look educated instead of desperate, saving coins in places even you forget about sometimes, insurance against your own weakness. The plan is vague, something about California, about orange groves and ocean air, and people too new themselves to judge others' pasts. Want to know the secret? Big Nose Nellie asks one night. She's drunk on champagne a customer left behind, loose-tongued with fermented honesty. Secret is most of us don't really want to leave. We say we do, dream we do, but this life gets in your blood like laudanum. Outside, we're nothing. Here, at least we're something, even if that something ain't much. The escape attempts continue despite everything. Portland. Jane disappears one foggy Tuesday, leaving only a note saying, "Gone to live." Whether she made it or not, you'll never know. Successful escapes require complete severance. No letters back that might expose carefully constructed new identities. You choose to believe she's teaching school somewhere, her past buried deeper than mineshaft graves. Historians document the few famous madams who retired wealthy, the rare reformed prostitutes who wrote memoirs from safe distances. They don't count the anonymous thousands who simply vanished into new identities, into potter's fields, into rivers and rumors. Every woman in this house is planning some form of escape, even if it's just the daily flight into laudanum dreams. The only question is which door you'll use when your time comes. The front entrance to a new life, or the back exit to oblivion. The hypocrisy burns worse than the carbolic acid you douche with twice daily. By sunlight, this town wears righteousness like a starched collar. But come nightfall, those same upstanding citizens shed their morals faster than wet clothes. The banker who foreclosed on Widow Martinez's farm spends his Thursdays in your bed, weeping about his loveless marriage. The minister who sermonizes about fallen women pays extra for you to dress like a choir girl. The judge who sentences prostitutes to 30 days hard labor can only achieve satisfaction while being whipped like the criminal he secretly knows he is. Town's got two faces, Big Mike observes while walking you to the necessary on a cold Tuesday morning. Daytime face all clean and Christian, nighttime face, well, he spits tobacco juice into the mud. That face looks a lot like the inside of this house. You pass a temperance crusader's wife hurrying down the alley, her face hidden by a deep bonnet. She's buying laudanum from Dirty Sally's back door, needing numbness, just like you do, just from different pain. The social choreography would be comical if it weren't so cruel. These men sit on city councils that pass ordinances restricting your movement, then sneak through back doors begging for exactly what they've outlawed. Their wives lead prayer circles for your salvation, while their husbands ensure your damnation remains profitable. Everyone knows everyone's secrets, but daylight demands collective amnesia. Saw something rich yesterday, Kansas City. Kate reports over breakfast. Mrs. Pemberton, head of the Ladies' Virtue Society, at Doc Morrison's getting treated for the clap. Same disease she says we spread like plague rats. The irony is sharper than broken glass. Respectable women catching what their husbands bring home, then blaming the prostitutes rather than the carriers. You learn to navigate this dual world with bitter skill. When the mayor's wife spits at you on Main Street, you keep walking, knowing her husband prefers backdoor entry and calls you mommy during climax. When the shopkeeper charges you double for moral contamination, you pay silently, remembering how he begged you to urinate on him last Tuesday. The power of knowledge without the ability to use it, that's your particular torture. They need us, Miss Charlotte explains during one of her philosophical moods. Need us to be dirty so they can feel clean. Need us to be low so they can feel high. We're the shadow that proves their light. She's reviewing the account books, noting which pillars of society owe money for services rendered. Without us, they'd have to face what they really are, and that, ladies, is why we'll always have work. The Protestant work ethic gets twisted into pretzels here. These men preach industry and virtue while visiting industrious women of negotiable virtue. They praise marital sanctity while explaining that their wives' frigidity drives them to your beds. They claim moral superiority while engaging in acts that would make Sodom blush. The mental gymnastics required could win Olympic medals if such things existed. Some girls try to use the hypocrisy as leverage. Blackmail tempts like candy in a jar. All those secrets, all that vulnerability. But girls who try it tend to disappear or die in ways the sheriff doesn't investigate too carefully. The system protects itself, and you're not part of the system. You're the grease that keeps it running, disposable and replaceable as axle oil. Funny thing about shame, Lotus observes in her improving English. They give it all to us, keep none for selves, like we're shame banks, storing what they cannot carry. She's right. Every transaction transfers not just money, but guilt, and you're expected to absorb both without complaint. The men leave lighter in conscience and coin, while you grow heavier with accumulated knowledge of human frailty. The children are the worst part, not young ones. Even frontier depravity has limits. But the teenage sons of respectable families, brought by fathers for initiation, you're expected to educate these boys in what their future wives won't do, to be their practice ground for appetites that proper women shouldn't satisfy. Watching fathers and sons share knowing looks afterward makes your stomach turn harder than spoiled meat. It's a civic service, the sheriff jokes while buttoning his pants. Keep the menfolk satisfied. Keep the peace in homes. You girls prevent more domestic violence than any law I could enforce. The fact that he's not entirely wrong makes it worse. How many wives avoid bruises because their husbands spent violence in your beds instead? How many proper daughters stay untouched because their fathers visit improper women? You're the relief valve for every suppressed urge, every twisted desire that can't be expressed in daylight. Sunday mornings showcase the hypocrisy best. Church bells ring while you count bruises and wash away Saturday night's sins. The same voices that sang hymns hours ago had begged for degradation at midnight. Through your window, you watch families parade to service in their finest clothes, never acknowledging the transactions that paid for those clothes: the minister's new coat, the judge's wife's imported hat, the banker's children's shoes, all purchased with money that passed through this house. We're the real Christians here, Baltimore Betty declares, wine drunk and philosophical, taking on men's sins, suffering for their salvation. Mary Magdalene had it easy. She only had to wash Jesus' feet. We wash everything else. The blasphemy should shock you, but after years of servicing men who quote scripture while sinning, traditional religion feels as hollow as a drunk's promise. The town needs you desperately and despises you for that need. You're the repository of every secret shame, the practitioners of every public denial. Without the velvet slipper and houses like it, this bastion of frontier civilization would collapse under the weight of its own hypocrisy. So they keep you in business while keeping you in your place, feeding the very appetites they claim to abhor. The changes creep in like fog at dawn, barely noticed until suddenly you can't see the familiar landmarks anymore. The railroad brings more than goods and travelers. It brings civilization, that peculiar disease that kills frontier freedoms with laws and ledgers. Where once stood raw wooden buildings and muddy streets, now brick facades and cement sidewalks proclaim the town's ascension to respectability. And respectability has no room for women like you. They're closing the row, Kansas City. Kate announces one breakfast, holding a newspaper like a death certificate. The city council, those same men who visit you in darkness, have voted to clean up the red light district. Not immediately. Even hypocrisy needs time to relocate its outlets. But within 6 months, the buildings will be razed, replaced with more suitable businesses. The women will be encouraged to seek redemption elsewhere, which is politician speak for disappear and don't embarrass us. The frontier that created you is vanishing faster than morning frost. Where prospectors once stumbled drunk from claims, now clerks hurry home to mortgaged houses. The wild gambling halls transform into social clubs with membership requirements. Even the saloons grow genteel, adding family dining sections where wives and children can eat without proximity to sin. Progress marches forward in starched collars and temperance pledges. It's the natural order, Miss Charlotte says, but her voice lacks its usual confidence. She's been selling off furniture, liquidating assets, preparing for an ending she saw coming before any of you. Towns grow up, get married, have children, can't have whorehouses next to schoolhouses, bad for property values. The bitter joke is that she owns more property than most city councilmen, but property bought with flesh money doesn't count in their moral mathematics. Some girls drift away early, sensing the change like animals before earthquakes. Portland Jane's empty room gets boarded up. No point in replacing girls when the whole enterprise faces extinction. Lotus starts teaching Chinese to minors' children, building a respectable trade before the old one ends. Even Big Mike takes a job as a warehouse foreman, claims his back can't handle the violence anymore, though you suspect he can't handle watching this world die. Where will we go? The question echoes through the house like a funeral bell. Some speak of San Francisco, that western Babylon where vice still thrives. Others mention Denver, Kansas City, anywhere the frontier hasn't been strangled by civilization's corset. But you're all older now, worn by years of hard use, competing against fresh girls in new markets. Starting over seems as impossible as becoming virgin again. The customers change too. Fewer miners flush with gold dust, more married businessmen sneaking out between church socials. The wild money dries up, replaced by careful budgets and guilty consciences. Men who once boasted about their exploits now slink in through back doors, terrified of recognition. The whole enterprise takes on the air of something dying, a boomtown going bust in slow motion. You help Miss Charlotte pack her office, each ledger a history of human frailty written in dollars and degradation. 20 years I've run this place, she says, wrapping her portrait of Queen Victoria in newsprint. Survived in Indian raids, mining busts, 3 fires, and 100 violent men, but can't survive respectability. She pauses, looking older than her painted face admits. Maybe it's time. Maybe we've all been ghosts longer than we knew. The final months feel like a wake, where the corpse keeps serving drinks. Regular customers make pilgrimages, sampling favorites one last time before the curtain falls. Some bring gifts, guilt offerings, or farewell tokens. Harold the banker weeps openly during his last visit, though whether he mourns you or his dying youth remains unclear. The judge presents you with a temperance pamphlet, suggesting you seek honest work, apparently forgetting he knows exactly how honest you can be. It's not the end of the world, Baltimore Betty insists, but her hands shake as she pours whiskey. Women like us been surviving since Eve ate that apple. We'll find a way. But the world has changed faster than your ability to adapt. The skills you've mastered, reading men's desires, managing their fantasies, surviving their violence, don't translate to typing pools or factory floors. Kansas City Kate makes plans for one last score, some scheme involving a traveling businessman and forged mining certificates. Others talk of marriage to any man who'll have them, respectability through association. You consider your options like a hand of bad cards, looking for any combination that doesn't end in total loss. The orange groves of California seem impossibly distant now, a dream dreamed by someone younger and less tired. The house empties room by room. Girls vanish in the night, leaving debts and memories. The piano gets sold to the new Methodist Church, its keys that once accompanied sin now praising salvation. The red velvet curtains come down, revealing windows grimy with years of secrets. Even the mirrors disappear, purchased by proper homes that will never reflect what these ones have seen. On the last night, Only a handful remain. You sit in the parlor, stripped now of its finery, just a room with worn floors and water-stained walls. Miss Charlotte opens her last bottle of good champagne, and you toast to survival, to the frontier that made and destroyed you, to the women who didn't make it this far. The bubbles taste like tears and time running out. What was it all for? Lotus asks in the gathering darkness. Nobody answers because everybody knows it was for nothing more or less than staying alive in a world that offered few options and fewer mercies. You lived as you could, not as you would have chosen. That has to be enough because it's all you have. Tomorrow the building will be demolished, its sins buried under progress. You'll scatter like seeds on the wind, some to take root in new soil, others to simply blow away. The Wild West that needed women like you is dead, killed by its own success. But tonight, in this empty room that held so much life and pain, you're still here, still breathing, still unbroken despite all attempts to break you. That's not nothing. That's everything. The candle burns low, casting shadows that dance like ghosts of all the women who worked these rooms. Outside, the respectable town sleeps peacefully, dreaming clean dreams made possible by dirty realities. And you close your eyes and drift, not to sleep, but to that quiet place inside where Sarah still lives, waiting patiently for her chance to exist again. And so, dear listener, as the last lights of the frontier dim and the dust settles on an era that was as cruel as it was wild, you find yourself at your own crossroads. The woman you were when you stepped off that stagecoach is gone, transformed by necessity into someone harder and softer, wiser and more wounded. The orange groves of California still whisper their promises, or perhaps it's the siren call of San Francisco's fog-shrouded streets that beckons. Some paths lead back east to reinvention, others to quiet disappearance in small towns where nobody asks too many questions. Tomorrow you'll choose a direction and walk toward whatever version of salvation you can afford. But tonight, in this moment between endings and beginnings, you allow yourself the luxury of just being, not a dove or an angel, not a symbol or a statistic, just a woman who survived the unsurvivable. The frontier may be closing, but you're still here, still breathing, carrying within you all the stories that respectable history will never tell. Rest now, weary traveler. Let the gentle darkness wrap around you like a shawl, soft as the dreams you once had, strong as the woman you've become. Whatever tomorrow brings, tonight you've earned your peace,